This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
Alright, so we actually managed to grab the main hard drive.
And this time it's intact.
Well, sure. I did not actually expect you guys to get it intact, but you rolled high enough, so you got it.
And I broke their security last time, so pulling all the info off, it should be a cinch.
True. But I thought you guys were going after the Bemisa Syndicate.
We were, but then we got our hands on the hard drive. The Bemisa Syndicate could wait until later. Who knows what information's on this drive?
I mean, there's got to be something super important on this for the Syndicate to risk all of that firepower to try and stop us.
Maybe we'll finally find out what MacGuffatonium is.
Yeah. All right, give me 1 second. Okay. All right. It turns out that you discovered that Lord Norris has commissioned a control band. This small circular band will allow him control over all of the other cyber interfaces that he distributed to his team.
Well, then we got to destroy this circular band thing.
Yeah, okay, but here's the thing about the band, right? So the band is made of MacGuffatonium.
Of course.
So it can only be destroyed in the heat of a Class 3 star.
Let me look at the map. Is there anything close?
All right, so like you go through your star charts and stuff, and there's one like a few parsecs from here, but it's guarded by like a big space station, like one that can destroy planets. It's called the Mortality Sphere.
That sounds ominous. What sort of minions does he have?
Well, he's got a group of test subjects that he's augmented with cybernetics.
Does the hard drive tell us what they can do?
I mean, yeah, sift through the info, and one can generate laser blasts from his cyber eyes.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, and then another has cybernetic wings, and there's a kid with a cryo generator and a harness that allows him to coat himself in ice, and a girl who can use electro-cybernetic waves to move things around with surges of force. And there's another guy, he's got huge cybernetic hands and feet, super agile, super strong, strong. And cyber tech, and there's Sergeant's a man who's in a techno chair. Uses cybernetic uplinks to read the thoughts of anyone that has an implant.
Wow, that's quite the opposition. I like it.
Is that somebody at the door?
Yeah, we're expecting a guest this session.
Hi, gang.
Hey, Craig.
This workshop looks amazing. What are you up to?
Well, apparently Bob and I took the story in odd directions, so Phil was just giving us the details of his Cyberpunk Lord of the Rings Star Wars X-Men enemies that we're about to face.
Cool.
And with that, welcome to the 436th episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast. Tonight we are joined by Craig Campbell to discuss using media inspirations in your games. Along the way, we'll take your suggestions, comments, examples from the chat room for life before jumping into the after show. But first, my name is Jerry.
My name is Phil.
My name is Craig.
And I am Old Man Logan. All right.
Oh, alrighty. So we do have a guest tonight, as you can see on if you're listening on podcast, you heard Craig. But Craig, why don't you introduce yourself? Because we haven't had you here in a while. In pandemic time, it's you were on here not too long ago for Capers, but I got a feeling that was longer than I think, right?
It's been a few years, yeah. And literally, not just because of the pandemic, where it feels like a few years. It's actually been a while, yeah. I'm a 30-year RPG player and GM. Started in D&D. I've moved into a lot of other stuff, particularly during the 90s in high school or in college, when you've got actually time on your hands.
Oh yeah.
At least I did. So lots of gaming, a lot of systems. I started doing a little bit of freelancing in 1999, kind of smattered throughout the 2000s. And that ramped up in the late 2000s and into the 2010s, where I did quite a bit of freelancing for Dragon and Dungeon Online during the 4th edition era. Cool. And when my 4th edition kind of freelancing started to wind down, I dove into like, well, I could, kind of wait out and see what happens with this 5th edition thing and see where I can latch on with that and do some D&D stuff, or I can look for other freelancing gigs to kind of, scratch the itch. Or I can be a sucker and try to design and publish my own game, which I did. And so Nerdburger Games was established 5 years ago, and I've designed and published a number of games through that imprint. And this is all, a side gig. So I'm an architect in real life, and kind of a nut for horror. Sci-fi and fantasy as well, of course, because gamer. But the horror thing is something that's like, I can't get enough of. Good horror movies is bad horror movies. I've rewatched plenty of them, and that ties into a little bit of what I'll be talking about here tonight.
Awesome.
You're speaking my language. I love that.
Yeah, Jerry's Jerry loves a good horror film and a bad one as well.
Mm-hmm.
So in your listing of games, your catalog of games, what number game was Capers?
Capers was as far as published games, it was number 2.
Okay. Nice. And I know because I've followed you through Twitter and IGDN and things like that. You work a lot. You are very hardworking. I'm a very lazy publisher. You are like a very hardworking publisher.
I've been told that I am prolific. I have the privilege, such as it is, of being unmarried without children. So that does a lot for the free time.
I've got some free time on your hands. All right. So I have one more question for you, because you are an architect. So I need to know, when you draw maps, are your maps really good? Even when you're just kind of winging it, or do you just scribble something on the dry erase board and people are just like, is he really an architect?
When I draw something on the fly, it's usually pretty on the fly.
Okay.
And I stick to the tropes of, if it's a dungeon, it's going to look like a dungeon. I'm not going to sit there and worry about is this an accessible dungeon? Is this right. How wide are the corridors? But I have joked many times about, dungeons are terrible for, complying with building and accessibility codes.
Oh yeah.
Lighting levels in dungeons are terrible. You can't, how are you supposed to wayfind in there with so little light? You have to bring your own light with you. You never see dungeons with big chambers with stairwells and with, adequate guardrails to prevent somebody from falling over. You're lucky if there's a stone handrail on the edge of your elevated gallery, but to have a 42-inch tall guardrail to keep somebody from accidentally flipping over the top of it, it's not there. But then again, if you had that, it would be a little harder to flip the enemies over the top of it.
Correct.
You might have to increase the DC to hoist somebody over the top of a proper guardrail. So yeah, but I will say this. When I was heavy into designing and writing adventures for Wizards and for Dungeon Online, there were a number of times that I drew the map to give to the cartographer to actually turn into a really nice painting or drawing. I drew that in AutoCAD.
Nice.
I laid out a 5-foot grid in AutoCAD, and I used AutoCAD tools to draw the walls and the doors and the windows. And there was an adventure in particular that took place inside of a ruined, basically a cathedral, like a big temple that was ruined, where there were an appropriate number of privies that were located there for the for the clergy who were no longer living there.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's always one of my giant weak spots is anything to do structurally. I'm terrible when I draw on a dry erase board, and then 2, if I have to make any of my own maps, they're awful.
You don't have to worry about all that stuff when you're dealing with fantasy. It's magic. How does that stand up? How does that stay up? Magic.
Yeah, I'm very much theater of the mind, just kind of it's a big room. You guys are with me. Good. Okay, let's go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I find that fascinating. I think that's great. I mean, that is one of those things where I always say that my love of Minecraft comes from being like a frustrated architect, because I like constantly just all I want to do is build things.
Yep.
During play, but can't really build anything. So this is like,
well, that's the great thing about being an architect is I don't actually build anything either.
Yeah.
I tell other people how to build it.
Yeah, there you go.
Phil, if somebody with Legos, I sympathize with you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a project manager. I don't actually do work. I just tell people how to do work. That's my secret. Okay, cool. We're gonna do a couple of announcements, and then we'll get into our main segment for tonight. I just have one Misdirected Mark announcement. Right, our Voyager Watch Party is now in week 11. We are heading into season 5 again. Like, there's no jump-in point at this point, unless you've already seen the series. But if you're a fan of Voyager and you just want to kind of hang with us, season 5 is. We're heading into kind of like peak Voyager. Like, there's some really good episodes coming up in the next couple of weeks as we go through. I think we're taking like 4 weeks to go through season 5. They're all pretty solid. And again, if you want to play the home game and you want to just like, you want to watch Voyager, but too far behind us, just go to the forums. All of the week-to-week episode guides are in there, so you can just follow along at your own pace. And just, watch and enjoy, Voyager, except for that one episode. Don't watch the one episode. We tell you in the notes which one it is. But yeah, I don't know, Craig, I don't know about you. Are you, like we've gotten through the pandemic here on the show. Like, we've actually gone through, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and now we're in the like middle of Voyager.
I've rewatched some. I haven't gone through like episode by episode, but I literally watched an episode of Next Generation just like an hour or two ago.
Oh, nice.
I can't think of the title of it, but it's the one with the exocomps.
Oh, I watched that. Like
Data
yep.
has, is willing to protect them because he thinks that they've gained they've become a life form. They're seeking to protect themselves.
That's a fantastic episode.
It's a fun episode.
And
it's a great episode for continuity because it does call back to when Picard had to defend Data's
Measure of a Man.
Yep, Measure of a Man. When
the
Data's,
exocomps actually get called back.
Individuality was questioned. What?
In the animated show Lower Decks, they actually do a callback to exocomps.
Oh, do they?
I can't wait to sit down and watch Lower Decks. Like, the number of callbacks in that.
When you watch it, I want to be part of this watch party with you guys, because I definitely want to watch Lower Decks with you, Bill.
Okay.
I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch as a group.
Yeah.
So we over the course of the pandemic, we took we had a handful of people in our chat room in our community who had never watched any Star Trek, and were like, oh, I don't even know how like one gets into it or whatever. And so we were like, okay, you know what? We're doing Star Trek school. Like, we're gonna watch a couple episodes a week, and we're gonna have like a little discussion about them. And we have we have live tonight, like at 11:30 Eastern. We actually meet up online for a teleparty and watch 2 episodes each week. And we've been doing that for about a year now.
Excellent. Yeah, I've rewatched a little bit of Deep Space Nine as well. I've dove into a few things that I've just been doing rewatches on. I did a rewatch on Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, nice. Did you watch Mayans yet?
I have not, and I've been tempted. There's like a part of me that's like, I don't know if the Mayans really, like they weren't that interesting to me when I watched Sons of Anarchy. But then like, why am I thinking that? Because like, well, now it's the show about them, so it's going to be very fleshed out, and it's not going to be just, just 1 or 2 characters that we kind of got to know. I'll probably dive into it at some point.
I don't think you'll be disappointed. I watched like 4 or 5 episodes and then kind of lost track of it, but it was really good, and the cast is really good as well.
Is Kurt Sutter show running it? Or is there somebody else?
I'm not sure. I'll have to, maybe we'll Google it in between.
All right, I'm going to steer us back now because we're drifting.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is where Bob gets us back on track. This is why I don't put any of the other opening parts of the show in. See, this is what happens because we just start talking to our guests. But Craig, you are actually here. We have you here. This is a kind of a cool occasion because we get you here for 2 different products in 2 different parts of the production life cycle.
Yeah.
So tell us first start us off with Good Strong Hands.
Sure. Good Strong Hands kickstarted back last year, and is like this close to being published, and it's just kind of taken a hit from COVID struck again with delays with the printer. So I was hoping that it was going to be out by the time we talked. It's looking like it's going to be next month, so people keep an eye out. It's basically like a darkly whimsical fantasy game about saving your fantastical world. You portray fantasy creatures or like newly arrived human allies who are struggling to protect your world of reverie from destruction at the hands of this malevolent, faceless entity called the Void. And it builds on shades of Neverending Story, Legend, Willow, Labyrinth, kind of like the 80s fantasy movies of my youth, which, in examining all of this, that there was this sense of whimsy to all of them, but there was like oftentimes like this weird darkness to them as well. And so I just kind of built, in keeping with like talking about, transposing media into a game, like that's, that was the inspiration for Good Strong Hands, was kind of creating, the RPG version with, inspired by those things.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very 80s thing, right? Like being a child of the 80s as well. Like here's your whole childhood, but also maybe nuclear war.
Yeah. and you'll survive it by going into the hallway and putting your, head down and your hands over the top of your head.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
All right, so that was Strong Hands.
There we go. Bob's on track. He's keeping us moving. Good. So that one's almost out. Already been Kickstarted, and again, right, it's just the world we live in right now, dealing with shipping and things like that.
Yep.
Your new one is actually in the middle of its Kickstarter right now, right?
Correct.
All right, tell us about Nowhereville.
Nowhereville is my love letter to mostly Stephen King stories, like particularly like the first half of King's career, in particular, kind of focused on the stories that were centered in and around Castle Rock, like the idea of this town where all of these terrible things happen. In the town itself and in the immediate vicinity, there's monsters and there's horrendous people doing terrible things, and there's like all this small town mentality of grudges that are held. And people who feel this fierce ownership of this home that they live in, even though it's really not something you probably should feel that way about. And for Nowhereville, I just kind of built the idea of this town that these horrible things happen in, and the town won't let you leave. Like there's something that prevents you from leaving it. You'll get sick, and it could eventually kill you if you leave the town for more than a day or two. So these characters are trapped there and these bad things are happening, but most of the characters are forgetting what happens. Like they're just like the terrible thing happens and it's immediately and it's there and there's the aftermath of it. And then a short time later, everybody just sort of forgets and the bad things continue to happen because nobody fights. And then you play characters who, for whatever reason, start to remember these things. Nice. And also know that you're trapped in the town, and you make your choice of like how you're going to stop these bad things from happening and fight back against the horrors of Nowhereville.
I like that idea, like that everybody just like forgets, because that's one of those things you always wonder is like how to like why would anybody, like, I mean you've kind of nailed it all up, right? Why would anyone stay? Well, people can't leave, they'll get sick, and then why wouldn't they do something about it, but they don't remember.
Yeah. Why do the characters in Bon Temps in True Blood, why do they keep living there?
Right.
Like there's just constant carnage. Monsters, the town is a monster magnet. And they even kind of address it on the show, like kind of late in the run of the show. But yeah, so and it comes out of like, in if you've seen the movies, it's present there too in the novel It. They're like bad things happen and the adults notice and they just kind of ignore it and nobody ever really learns from it, and everything these bad things just kind of continue. It borders on the potential of role playing, reliving trauma and finding a way to deal with that trauma by fighting back against it. In this case, it's kind of in a literal sense of fighting back against the town that has done these terrible things. But there's and then it's all laced through with small town tropes of politics and people holding people holding grudges, and people who are willing to lash out at other people because it's hard to get over something. And I grew up in a small town, and I've seen this firsthand. It's hard to get over something when you're constantly reminded of the thing that happened or the person that did something to you, because you're stuck in a town of 3,000 people and you see them all the time. So that, that sort of thing just festers.
Right. And then it's just a constant accumulation of one little thing.
And it's just it's a matter of time before somebody just does something bad.
Right.
And that's what the evil gen is a prey on in most of those stories too.
Yeah.
That waiting for that to tip over. Yep.
Very nice. And so this is in Kickstarter right now.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about the Kickstarter.
The Kickstarter is really straightforward. I kept it really slim and lean. It's the game's written, play tested, edited. The art is ready. And I'm starting the basics of layout is figured out, and I'm starting into actually doing putting in the time of doing the actual layout. And so the intent here is to turn over the Kickstarter fairly quickly and get the product out. There's one backer level that's a $20 PDF, and you'll get a link to purchase a softcover or hardcover. And then, whatever PDF support materials and things go with it. I just decided everything up front, everything's ready to go. So updates have been less about stretch goals and more about just revealing little secrets of what's inside the game.
I love Kickstarters like that, right? I love simple Kickstarters. I love, I don't mind really complex ones either, but there is something about a very flat Kickstarter that's okay, we're just going to go we're right in. This is easy to understand. I'm getting this thing. The fact that you already have it's done, right, is another thing.
That's really important. That's a big thing for me, is a done Kickstarter.
That's something I've focused on quite a bit. Generally speaking, when I go to Kickstarter, it's at the very least it's written, play tested, and generally edited.
Yeah, that's great. We've done the same thing. I like that, right? I like the idea that look, it's a thing. We're just we need money to make it into a thing you would want to look at.
Right. The game exists, but let's make it a pretty game.
Yeah.
Where everything is really organized well, and I don't misuse a lot of commas like Phil.
Oh, that's it's my specialty.
Serial comma.
Although Grammarly has been doing wonders for attacking that.
It has.
And slowly training it out of me. Over time, Grammarly, I'll catch it before Grammarly does. I'm oh, no, that's not supposed to be there. Yeah, no, that's true. Oh boy. Right. Yeah, you're on to our shtick. Good. All right, so that's up. That's I know we just put a link in the chat. There'll be a link in the show notes. So it'll be everywhere. And when does it finish running?
It finishes up it's about halfway right now as we're recording. So it finishes up on the first Thursday in June, whatever that works out to. I don't know.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Well, that's good, because then you're in the we're in the doldrums part of
it's completely funded, so everything right now it's just kind of chugging along.
June 3rd.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's a really nice place to be when you get into the middle of the Kickstarter. It's funded. It's you're good to go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice. Cool. All right, good. Well, then we're gonna jump over to our feature segment, and we're gonna head into the workshop to talk about getting inspiration from different media.
All right, here we go, Phil.
Oh, okay, hang on. Workshop! We're going to go look at other media. We're going to go check out comic books, movies, books. We're going to pull in ideas. We're going to put them into our games. We're going to make them cool because we need inspiration.
Don't suck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
It's not my best one. Not my best one, but it was pretty good. Take a sip.
So tonight's workshop is going to be about how we get inspiration from different media. Because while role-playing games are can affect their own core media and can be their own source of inspiration. Most GMs and game designers get inspiration from other media, from books, movies, comics, video games, etc. And this practice goes back to the origins of the hobby itself. Even D&D's original inspirations were captured in Appendix N of the Dungeon Master's Guide. So tonight we're going to hang out with Craig and talk about how to take inspiration from other media and how to work them into your game.
All right, and of course, to get started with that, we need some definitions from Phil. So,
behold, you are in the presence of Definition Panda.
Just like Craig knows, we did not write that one ourselves. That was Todd Crapper gifted us that audio.
Yep.
That was
Thanks, Todd.
all right. I got a few definitions for tonight that we'll probably wind up kicking around at some point or another during our discussion. The first one obviously is inspiration, right? The process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, especially to do something creative. In terms of RPGs, right, this is when something makes you want to work on your game, be it as a designer, a GM, or a player, right? So when we talk about inspirations, we're not just talking about inspiration for game designers. There are plenty of media that inspire GMs or media that inspire players for ideas for their characters and the like. So inspiration often comes with positive feelings, right? When we're inspired, we're usually pretty energetic about it. And this helps with emotional investment. All right. Next word, trappings. The outward sign, features, or objects associated with a particular situation, role, or thing. This might be things like specific terminology, descriptions, names, things like that. So like the idea from a genre is going to also have like trappings from where it came from. Like, for instance, like a lightsaber has a very like the trappings of the lightsaber is the name lightsaber, but like an energy sword is like the more generic version of that. Tropes, figurative or metaphorical use of word or expression, right? We've talked about tropes a lot on the show in the past. For example, the hacker is a common trope in like a group, with a group of criminals who are on a heist, right? Nowadays, you always have a hacker with you. Tropes aren't bad, because tropes are shortcuts. Like they help us like cue into what a thing, like what a media, what a story or whatever is about when we hit on those tropes. Next one is pastiche, an artistic work in a style that imitates that of another work, artist, or period. In the context of tonight, that's going to be being inspired by some media and making something that's exactly like it. And then finally, a phrase that we've kicked around a lot here as well, filing off the serial numbers. Right? This is just a phrase that means to remove the trappings of an idea so that its origin isn't immediately recognizable. And we'll talk about why that might be important in a few minutes.
All right. So with those definitions in place, let's talk about the general act of drawing inspiration from other media. Jerry, what can you tell us?
Well, when we draw inspiration from other media for role-playing games, this is going to be most likely either spontaneous or intentional. When it's spontaneous, you're often consuming the other media, and you get an idea to use it in your game, or make a game from it. That would be really cool, or I like that historical chunk, we're going to use that. But when it's intentional, you already have an idea of something you want to create, then you look for media you can consume to draw inspiration from. Like if you're going to do a mecha game, you might decide to look at things like Mobile Suit Gundam or Robotech to get some idea of what you want to draw from. Neither way is better than the other, and most people do both at different times. So, Craig, this is a question for you. For both Good Strong Hands and Nowhereville, tell us about how you were inspired to make both games, the media that inspired you, and if it was spontaneous or if it was intentional.
Well, I think they were probably both intentional in that, like, I was looking to kind of design a game, and I had like a general genre of thing that I kind of wanted to do. I wanted to do a horror game. At one point, for example, with Good Strong Hands, I told myself, when I started doing this, which if I'm going to make a fantasy game, it's going to be something that isn't kind of traditional swords and sorcery fantasy. There's plenty of that out there. I don't need to compete with 50 other games. So it was, looking at like just different fantasy things that different fantasy subgenres and movies and books and things that I knew that struck me and that, kind of, resonated with me personally. And that's where I just kind of, it was looking through, skimming through, it was either Amazon Prime or Netflix, and coming across like, oh, there's, the Never-Ending Story. And that's kind of, that was the initial thought. And then, I just kind of hit on those other 80s movies, that are kind of, in the similar vein. And, I've joked that, and it's kind of a joke, but it's not really a joke, but like the Artax scene in Never-Ending Story, affected me to the level that 30 years later, I made a game where you can save Artax. Because in the movie you don't get to.
Spoilers.
So yeah, spoilers for a movie that's 3 decades old. But people know that's a scene that whenever I've talked about this, it resonates with people. It's like that was like when I was young, and I was kind of like they killed ostensibly the main character's best friend. and certainly this is a magical world. Certainly Artax isn't dead. Artax will come back. Something will happen. Nope. And so, it made me look at, and then take the time to examine those different movies and some of the things that they had in common, and turn that into a game. So it's decidedly a fantasy game, but not, kind of straight up swords and sorcery kind of fantasy. With Nowhereville, it was, I had done Die Laughing, which is kind of a horror comedy game. And it's very broad. But I wanted to do something for horror that was more, was more straight up horror. Like, okay, this is going to be like bad things happen and the characters have to deal with monsters and horrible situations. And it's not, tinged over with tongue in cheek humor or anything. It's been a while since I read, much Stephen King, because I read a lot in his early first half of his career. But I think it was probably the It movies that got me thinking about that again. And I started kind of examining all those stories, and I rewatched some of the other movies. Some of them are kind of stinkers. Some of them are pretty good. Just built out on that idea. And we've already kind of touched on the idea of like, why would people stay in this town if terrible things happen? And how that was kind of inspired by It. I just found, like Phil said, I nailed down a very specific reason. Like, you can't because you get sick, but there's actually a little bit more to that. And there's, things about the town, and about the character archetypes that you play that are also inspired very much by Stephen King kind of stuff. So it was just finding what bits and pieces of that I wanted to translate into a game, and, without like using characters like right out of the stories.
I think what's fun when you're doing like intentional, when you're doing like that kind of intentional work is like, and it's like one of the fun things for being, either a writer or game designer or whatever, is like, you're like, nope, I have to watch this movie. I'm doing research.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I love those things where you just, I don't know about you. Like, I get into this kind of, I do this even when I'm just running games. Like, I get whatever the genre of the game is, like I start to binge up media. Like, I just start consuming media about it, so I can just kind of get really comfortable with, the general tropes for something. And, I just like, I wind up like running down a rabbit hole of it starts innocently enough. Like, I'm going to run an espionage game. I think I'll just watch some Bourne. Then I've like watched all 3 Bourne movies, right? The other ones are okay, but the first 3, right? Like, and then, immediately on to like the next, oh, now I should watch, Homeland, or I should watch the, and just start drifting through. So I don't know. Is your process like that? Like, is it just like, does it snowball as you kind of get into it?
I did that to an extent with both of these, where I started watching, particular movies, or just doing some research and just reminding myself, like, what some of the things that were happened in some of the Stephen King books, and thematic elements that you see that kind of show up in King stories, in the small town stories, quite a lot. And it was one of those things where I used, like, for example, with Good Strong Hands, I started with Legend and the Never-Ending Story, and I modeled character archetypes in playbooks for the game, very much unlike characters right out of the movie. Like there are playbooks in there in the game that are like, oh, that's clearly Sir Didymus from Labyrinth, or that's clearly the Pixie from Legend, because they're like, they literally have like abilities that are kind of like right from the story. But then also there came a point where I kind of got into the mindset, and I kind of like, okay, now I understand what I want this game to be, where this game is taking me. And that opened up developing other things that weren't directly inspired by the media. There might be like every so often like an idea for like, oh, here's a cool scene. I should make sure that like some sort of character can do that sort of cool thing that's in the scene, but you wouldn't necessarily recognize it as being a straight homage to that character.
Nice.
Where cool. It just like I got into the zone about halfway through playbook development, and like, okay, now they're all just kind of coming. It's like, oh, now I want to do a monster, I want to do a fantasy race that's like this, and I want to do a fantasy folk that's like that, and it's built out from there.
Cool. Awesome. All right, so getting that rush of inspiration is great, but Phil, how do you go from something inspiring you into something that you can use in your game for publishing?
Sure, right. So we need to start talking about as you're getting that inspiration, what to take, what not to take, right? What to leave behind. And there's a number of reasons you shouldn't just copy things directly into your game. From a designer's perspective, right? There's things like copyrights and trademarks and laws and stuff. So like you just, can't just directly lift certain things out, out of media and things like that. From a GM's point of view, in most cases, if you're worried about lifting things directly, it's, a lot of it is either one that your players don't directly recognize it for what it is and kind of then know what what happens next. But it also, there's a need to actually get it to fit into your game world, right? Like one can be inspired by the Kumite from Bloodsport, but you need to kind of, fix it up a little before you put it into your own TMNT game. True story in high school. Totally did that. So there's a need to take that source of inspiration, kind of extract from it the thing that is giving you the inspiration, and get it into something more generic so that you can get it into your game. So we're going to focus on that first part, which is the process of like looking at other media and understanding what we find inspiring, right? So for instance, like we might be watching John Wick and feel inspired to make our own modern action RPG from it. But like, what are our inspirations from that, right? Was it that we just really like the high octane action? Did we like the shadow world of like the high table, like the currency and all like the secret places that like that currency opened up? Was it a combination of those things? Like, what, like when we're designing, we want to kind of know, like what are we being inspired by? So that we can pick it up and take it with us. So looking at a source of inspiration and identifying tropes and other elements, is both intuitive, right? There's just things we're going to pick up on as we're watching it. And some of it's deliberate. Like it's actually doing the study of like looking at a piece of media and saying, okay, why am I getting such a rush from this scene or this trope? Like, what is this doing? Like, why is it getting me this way? And how can I get that out and into my game? So, coming back to you, Craig, for both of your games, can you elaborate on that? Can you give us some examples of like how you kind of went through the media and like looking for things to pull out?
Sure. Well, with Good Strong Hands, I hit on like, where I pulled like the fantastic creatures, the fantasy races from some of these different movies. There's the Wildkin, who are anthropomorphized mammals, where if you read the talents, like, well, that's clearly Sir Didymus from Labyrinth. There's like, you could sort of recreate him.
That's cool.
But then there's also like, you can be an otterkin or a rabbitkin. So, you can be a bunny person or an otter person. The one that like, I think that was the driving force for Good Strong Hands was the Nothing from never-ending story, which is, like it's just this, it's represented by this just roiling cloud of blackness, and the idea that we hear about, like, the forests are crumbling and everything's falling apart, and the world is succumbing to this entropic force that's destroying everything. And it struck me, okay, so that's a great kind of uber villain that the characters can be fighting against. But then it also struck me that in some of these movies, there's a certain melancholy to the stories where the characters are kind of infused with a sadness of like the impending doom and how horrible this is. Like we see Rockbiter lamenting his inability to stop the nothing with his big, good, strong hands. And it's one of the best scenes in the movie. And I thought, well, how can I instill the idea of this melancholy that, like, how can I put an emotional spin on what I'm creating? And that was to, turn the void into something that happens every couple hundred years. The characters are going to fight back and stop the void from destroying the world. And then in another century, somebody else is going to have to stop it again. You can't actually stop the void. And what is implied in that is that someday the void is going to win. Someday the heroes that rise up to fight back against it are going to fail. And so you're kind of fighting a losing battle in the long game. And so I didn't go so far as to, like, explicitly lay that out, but like I put all the clues into the game that people, at least some players, who read that, the information that's provided and how it's presented, will kind of get the idea that, like, okay, this is like, I'm fighting for the world now, but there is a sadness that, like, someday this is going to end.
The loss of innocence.
Yeah. And sure, and having characters who recognize that. You could have characters that have a character that easily started, being, like, really positive and thinking, okay, well, let's go out there, we can do this, we can, cure the world, and we can stop the void. And by the end, they realize that this has just been this long slog of a battle, and it's just going to happen again. So, and here comes the train, everybody. So while I'm talking, but
it's like perfectly in the background. It's really good.
With Nowhereville, there's and this isn't so much from the small town stories, but it comes into play a little bit here and there, but especially with, like, any of the stories that are the Dark Tower series and ones that are kind of connected to the Dark Tower, because King has managed to weave damn near every one of his stories into a cosmology. And one of the things that he refers to and comes back to constantly is the purpose and the random. These are these primordial forces. The purpose is what the world is, how it's moving forward, how it should be, what's good about it, and the random are the things that seek to undermine that. And creatures and monsters and people are sometimes sort of defined in the stories as being agents of the purpose or the random. In it, the Pennywise is an agent of the random. Explicitly defined sort of that way in the book. And there's another entity that's referred to in the book that we don't really see in the movies. This turtle, this great cosmic turtle that is an agent of the purpose, that opposes it. And so I wanted to, like, okay, I want to take those two ideas and really, like, we see them in D&D and other games, like it's Law and Chaos, right? We've seen the alignment chart. But I wanted to approach the idea, well, what about having a way for characters to ally themselves as agents of the random or the purpose? And so in the game, there's a track of 10 checkboxes that you start with your character. You start with one of the middle two boxes checked. And as the game plays, depending on things that happen in the game, you move one direction or the other on the track. And one direction is toward the order and one direction is toward the chaos. And your character becomes better and better at fighting monsters if they move toward order, and they become better and better at hiding and deceiving monsters if they move toward the other direction, and they're going to gain some abilities. And there comes a point where they kind of reach the end of that track. And then when they go off the end of the track, something else happens. And they reset themselves, and they have to recommit themselves to, are they going to be an agent of the random or the purpose?
Oh, that's cool.
The order or the chaos. And so it was a way to bring that concept into the game without it just being like, oh, and by the way, this monster is an order, is a monster of chaos, and this NPC is an NPC of order, but actually giving it like a mechanical bent and allowing characters to explore that a little bit.
And I love the idea that even after you've gone over in one direction, that there's a reset. It's not like, and your character's hopelessly lost to one side of this conflict. Like, you've got, like, you get to like kind of, I guess something dramatic happens, and then you get to like recommit yourself.
Yes. And, maybe you go the other direction this time, or maybe you recommit yourself to going the same direction you went last time.
Sure. Which makes for great drama, right? Like, after everything that happens, you're like, I got to change my ways, or nope. Like, nope, that was good. I'll just do more of that.
Yep.
Right. And just,
Yeah, I give you mechanical stuff, and then you just tie your own personal preference of like, well, how does this reflect in my character, as far as role playing goes? Like, what changes about my character when they embrace the chaos a little bit?
Oh, it's cool. That's very cool.
I like that.
All right. So now that we have those things identified, how do we take that and change it into something for our games, Jerry?
First off, we want to try to file off the serial numbers. In the simplest terms, this is where we what we call file off serial numbers. It's the act of breaking down a piece of inspiration and remove any trappings while retaining what made it the inspiration in the first place. It's going to require both an understanding of what made it inspirational, which is what Phil and Craig just talked about, as well as understanding the trappings that need to be removed in order to make it work in your game. And there is a bit of an art to this. There are times you want to scrub something completely clean and just use the source of the inspiration, like a trope or generic form of the element, like being informed by being inspired to have like a lightsaber, but just have it as all sorts of weapons made of energy instead of just a single sword that has an energy field. And there's times when you want to evoke the source material in your game. It only makes small changes to the element. So if you want to make your John Wick inspired game, maybe everybody has black metallic coins as the underground currency in the underworld. Similar to the gold coins, but in this case they're black and they're metallic, and it gives a different
totally
feel.
Different.
But everybody's gonna know what you're referring to, and immediately be able to identify with that trope and what to do with it next. So, with that in mind, Craig, in either game, can you give an example of a time when you abstracted the source of inspiration to incorporate in your game, and another time when you took something and only made very, very small changes?
Well, I kind of hit on some of these things, but just because they were, some of the big things that were running through my head. But like the cover of Good Strong Hands, and I've got proof copies for the DriveThruRPG version. I don't know if you can. A little hard to make out in the light and everything, but there's a person over here, and there's another person up over here, and they're helping somebody get pulled out of muck, out of black, like there's muck that's trying to drag them down. That is straight up Atreyu saving Artax, just with different characters. I mean, it's literally like, okay, I'm going to put that inspiration right on the cover of the book. People will, I think there's some people will look at that and say, oh, that's just, you just swapped out characters, but it's like literally just doing the same thing. Which I use, it's the cover of the book. The intention there is that it's going to tell you what you need to know about the game. It's going to be like something that's going to, the artwork on a book's cover hopefully conveys a lot about what the game is about. And there's clearly a struggle going on, and it comes across as inspirational because it's two people helping somebody else out. You think that they're probably going to be okay, but it's clearly Artax being pulled into the swamp. Let me think. I already talked about Sir Didymus. I'm trying to think. Is there another spot where I took the source of inspiration, where I abstracted it out to practically just almost being gone? Off the top of my head, I'm
Yep. There's no pressure.
Yeah.
Feel free to talk. I'll see if I'm going to scroll here and see if something jumps out at me again. And
Yeah,
like,
I'll comment on the cover, right? So I think that's a really smart idea. Like the idea being is that one, for people who are familiar with the genre, like they're going to pick right up on that, right? And it's veiled enough that it it's a unique cover, but then it's been left intact enough that people are going to be like, I know what this is about, and therefore I understand a lot. Like I understand a lot of what this game is going for based on this cover. So it's a really nice way. It's a really nice use of tropes, right? Like it's a really nice way to kind of convey a lot of information in a very compact way. And for people who aren't familiar with the genre, like they're just going to pick up on the idea of like struggling and saving people, and that also works in your advantage.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think like you don't lose on that one. It's not
right. It's
not such an obscure reference that if people don't know immediately what it is, they're not going to understand anything. It works for you, at the surface level, and then it works, it works as you get deeper into it.
Yeah, and the characters that are helping their companion out of the muck are literally doing it with their good strong hands. Like they're reaching out with their hands and saving somebody's life.
Did you just write that right into the art order? Like, did you write like?
It's been too tempting to use and save the world with your good strong hands to use that line that that's on the back of the book. It'll be in marketing blurbs and things.
Sure.
But something that hit me about Nowhereville actually was the abstraction of I looked at all the looked at all these different characters from these Stephen King small town stories, and I didn't try to recreate any specific character or more. I didn't try to recreate a specific character archetype. What I found myself realizing was that many of these characters, one of the things among many that you can boil the character down to, you can find what is the character's relationship with the town that they live in.
Yep.
Are they the old timer that's been there forever and that's seen everything? Are they the kid that is kind of untouched by the bad things that go on? Are they the pillar of society, where the whole everybody in the town kind of knows them and they're important to the town? If they stop doing what they do, the town would suffer. And that became all the archetypes. Mm-hmm. It's not something that you're necessarily going to pick up on. It's I don't make allusions to Sheriff Pangborn specifically, or to Sheriff Bannerman, or to Gage Creed, or I don't. Yeah. They're not overt, but the archetypes are these very simple. This is what your character's relationship is with the town.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. And I mean, especially since you're putting such an emphasis on small town, right? That small town mentality, having those iconic individuals, there's the person, who owned, I grew up in a small town, and one of my friends, when I was growing up, and I didn't know this until I went to his house one day. It never clicked to me. He had the same last name as seven different businesses in town. And then it came out one day, I was in 5th grade or something, his family founded the town, right? They originally owned all of the land, that all of those businesses were just relatives of his in one form or another. And then eventually they all got sold off, but streets were named after his family, all of those things. It never clicked with me when I was little, until I was at his house, and his I don't remember how we got into it, but his parents brought out this scrapbook and had all these pictures of the town being formed. And it was very much one of those things. He was town royalty. He came from the descendants of the town kind of thing.
Cool.
Yeah, he was a child of the town.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Not just of these people. There's a greater. That's a good archetype.
Oh yeah. Feel free.
I should throw that together real quick.
Yeah.
Toss it in the game.
Yeah. I mean, his family knew everything about that place. It used to be this thing. Yep. Oh, his great grandfather, he owned like that was his farm, and then he sold it. Now it's a golf course. Like all of it. Like that was like what it was like hanging out with them.
That was my roommate's father when I was in college. The one who I worked for. Like his family owned all of the grocery stores and things like that in town. They all had their names on them. And when I worked at his dad's owned that store, all the other houses on the block, and all of the other houses on the adjacent blocks. So in like a 5x5 grid, he owned all that property. So a lot of these people were his tenants and so on. And even though he was very much a kind of Dave Thomas from Wendy's kind of aw shucks guy, he actually wielded a lot of power and decision making in that town and just kind of played it off as nothing.
At least he was Dave Thomas and not Brad Wesley.
Oh, did you just make a Roadhouse reference?
I did. I went there.
Okay, there we go. Oh. No. He honestly looked a lot. Imagine Dave Thomas with less hair, and that was really and very friendly, very very friendly and
cool.
He'd be a character in a book. He'd be the person you go to when stuff is going down. So they give you some advice.
Nice.
But so Craig, you got some more questions? Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I think we're in a good spot, right?
I think we finished that part up.
What's it? Yeah, we've hit the halfway point.
Mm-hmm.
We have a few more questions to go in a minute, but we're going to take a break. Bob, why don't you tell us about another show on the Misdirected Mark Network?
Absolutely.
And then we'll hit up the chat room.
Have you heard about the lounge? Our good friend Doc Palindrome finds the best, the brightest, the most fun game designers and sits down to have a cool chat with them. You never know what conversation is going to come up in the lounge. Alrighty. Chat room is enraptured by our topic tonight. No particular questions. We had a lot of discussion about the Neverending Story, partly because I've never seen it. Like whatever, it happens. Can't watch all the movies. Yeah. Can't consume all the media.
Can always go back and watch it. That's a thing.
Yeah.
We can always have an 80s movie night. Like, that's a thing.
The great thing about the Neverending Story is that it's never ending, so you can just jump in at any time.
Yeah. Like, lies.
There's no beginning. There's no beginning and there's no end.
One thing struck me, though, was the comment about not being able to leave the town. It's like, why do the people stay there? Because they can't leave. And that just, I don't want to go too deep into the weeds on this because it strays, but it's something that I thought quite a few times about New York City in Marvel Comics. Like, yes. Why do people fucking live in New York when all the bad guys are constantly doing stuff? New York is a hotbed of villain activity and destruction, and yet people stay there. So
I'd like to think in the Marvel Manhattan, housing prices are not nearly astronomical because
probably
like Galactus could build a world-eating machine on top of your building.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very, very possible. So
that'll drive the property values down.
Yeah,
real world. Having spent 11 months there, real world Manhattan, there is just a sense of, well, it's going to happen here. I mean, after the people I knew down there after 9/11, there was this idea that they were positive that it was going to happen again in the next 2 years. Like, we're going to have an even bigger tragedy here, and we're ready for it. I mean, that was their attitude, was basically bring it on, and that might be part of it. So, Phil X-Man. Okay, we have something in the chat room.
That's Xander.
But yeah, I can see both of those happening, having a reason why, in the real world, I look at some of these places and go, why do they live there?
Yeah.
Mother Nature's wiped your town off the face of the earth several times. There must be something supernatural keeping you there.
Yeah.
So is there a character, Craig, in Nowhereville that's like the person who comes from the outside of the town and is like, why are you all still here?
Well, there's a character archetype, a playbook called The Returned,
Okay.
Which is the character who has managed to leave the small town, but then comes back for whatever reason. And so they have like a slightly different perspective on everything.
Yeah.
Now, as far as NPCs go, there's, I did something a little different with NPCs. What I did was there's a whole cast of characters, right? A whole cast of NPCs, and there's a town and a map and a bunch of locations and things. But I didn't specify. I basically, for each of the NPCs, I like kind of wrote up who they are, what they're like, and then I gave each of them 6 possible secrets. And you can choose what you want to use for the purposes of your game. And so of those secrets, 3 of them are mundane, everyday, just like regular people. Like, okay, your character got away with murder at some point. Or your character is engaged in embezzlement. And then 3 of those secrets are supernatural, like your character is secretly a member of a cult, or is, a vampire, or, some other monster, or has some strange ability, is a pyrokinetic. And you can, of course, have, plenty of NPCs that don't have those secrets. They're just people that are living in the town. Mix it up and keep players on their toes. But the idea being that, the same GM could run the game multiple times, even for some of the same players, and not have, like, nobody's going to learn the town.
Nice.
Nobody's going to sit down and you're like, okay, now I know that the deputy is always this way. Well, you don't know that because there's 6 other variant deputies that you could be dealing with.
Cool.
I'm picturing that one, like the return, who like brings their like significant other with them. And like the return's like, oh, but this is just how the town is, right? And the significant other's like, what is going on here? Like there's something seriously wrong with these people. And he's like, nah, I don't know. Like that's just old man Jenkins. Like, I don't like.
Everybody just shrugs it off.
Yeah, it just, does that.
Don't worry, soon you'll be one of us.
Yes,
one of us.
It's written up in the book, after you're there for about a month or so, you kind of become a member of the town, and it's at that point you can't leave, and it's at that point you start forgetting things. But yeah, you could certainly have your character could return with and be the one who remembers and becomes a PC, but has like family members or something that came with them.
Oh, I'm getting a very Black Hole Sun kind of feeling for this, right? Like, just like, I don't know, that song seems to resonate at this moment of like just after a month, like one day you wake up and you're just like, I think I'm gonna go mow the lawn.
Yeah.
Like it's done. Like, you just see like the end of a movie, right? Like they never got out, and just like all of a sudden they wake up and they're just mowing the lawn, saying hi to the neighbor, right? Just lost. Oh, I love it.
Yep. Everything's fine.
It's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
All right.
Nobody remembers
jump
what
back
happened.
in for part 2.
Welcome.
And for part 2, Phil, what are some of the advantages of using media inspirations in your games and game designs?
Yeah, I think we've been building up on this as we've been talking, so far this evening. But, I mentioned at the top of the segment, right? For lack of a better word, right? And inspirations are, they're inspiring, right? They fire us up. If you're a game designer, those kind of inspirations are the kind of things that like help you get through the more tedious parts of game design, right? Like just the, when it becomes a slog, remembering that you're, really inspired, or even just having those moments where you kind of go back to the inspirational material and you're like, oh, right, this is why I'm doing this. Like, okay, good. And then for GMs and players, those inspirations that are in a game, like the things about the game that make it inspiring, that's what gets emotional investment, right? That's what gets people committed to the game. That's, honestly, let's admit, like that's how you get through scheduling, humps, and that's how you get to like exciting moments in the game is all through emotional investment. And like how that happens, like it comes from a lot of different angles, right? Like there's a lot of different reasons why somebody connects to a piece of media or something that gets picked up from a piece of media and put into a game. And everybody has like their own reasons or their own ways that they get inspired. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask us as a group is, when it comes to games inspired by other media, like what draws you in? Like when you notice it, like you're like, oh, this game's inspired by X. Like what is it about that you're just like, oh, I want to play this game for this reason? Start us off, Greg.
Yeah, I think it's finding the truth in the story, whether that's, like with Stephen King stories, it's the, what a small town is like. And you can transpose that for anybody who didn't live in a small town. You can transpose that into a tight knit family, or a working environment where kind of everybody kind of knows each other and has worked with each other for a long time, where these relationships develop. And you recognize, like, some of the things that repeat and some of the things that are very human and very, that resonate with you. And I find myself, from the RPG designer side of things, I find myself then wanting to share that through the media that is inspiring it. So I can take those aspects of that media and transpose that into a game and kind of hit on those same thematic elements and those same kind of connections and emotions. Or just like, just general storytelling perks and quirks of like, well, this is, great action, that feels a certain way. This is, a character moment that's very, personal and painful to, that you pull out of a movie or a TV show or a book or whatever, and generate a game that allows you to kind of bring that over into the game and have other people experience and be able to share it. It's a way to communicate with people about the things that I like and care about, and see if they do too. Yeah, that's cool. That's a great reason. I know for me, it's the frustrated writer. Like when I see I like watching TV and I like reading books and stuff, but I always consider them passive media, not active media, right? I'm reading the person's story. So like when I see a game that emulates something, or is inspired by something, what really gets me fired up is the chance to be able to create my own stories in that setting. I know, the first time I saw Cartel, the first time I saw the ash can for Cartel, and I knew exactly what it was, and I was like, oh, I want to tell these kind of stories. I love that kind of media. I totally want to do this. And yeah, for me, that's always the case, is that, and since because I GM so much, and I'm probably 90% of a GM, for me, it's always that chance to be able to tell a story in that particular genre. And I love when, a designer has kind of keyed in on a some sort of genre, and made it very clear, this game does this genre, and then I'm in. How about you, Bob?
Yeah, so for me, much like Craig, it's the sharing part. I want to share with the other people at the table all the things that I love about the genre that's or the media property that's being emulated by the game. You sit down, it's we're going to play a Star Trek game at some point. And I can't wait to sit and geek out Star Trek at a table with a bunch of other people that are ready to geek out Star Trek. So that's what I really enjoy about that part.
Even if we had to make them watch 3 series of Star Trek to make sure that they would be prepared to play, quote, properly.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. What about you,
There was an ulterior motive.
There was a plan.
There's a plan. There's always a plan.
Yeah.
Jer?
For me, it's just to play around adventures in that world. I always, when I see fantasy worlds or sci-fi worlds or monster worlds, I'm always interested in seeing what else is there, kind of interact with all the things that we didn't get to see fleshed out enough, or to interact with them in different ways. If I'm running Star Wars, or playing in Star Wars, I'm not really interested in meeting Luke Skywalker. I want to fight the Empire. And if I'm playing a DC Heroes game, I don't want to team up with Batman. I just want to go after the Joker. Or I want to get into the dirty underbelly of Gotham City or explore what happens in Metropolis. It's a chance as a GM or a player to interact with that world in a way and tell other stories. And tell the stories that kind of go behind the scenes in that. Even when we talked about Star Trek, that there's a lot of the Next Generation episodes that end right before I wonder what happened when those two characters got back to the ship and had to talk to somebody kind of thing. And those are the things that are fun to go into is, what are the fun dramas that occur afterwards? And what are the things that they couldn't get into in detail in this scene? And those are fun to get into. And a lot of what's going on in role-playing games based on media is exploring all of those other parts of the media worlds.
Yeah.
So that's what I like. I want to try to kind of interact with stuff. All right.
Cool.
Bob?
So, as it is with all things, using inspirations from other media can't just be a bonus. Jerry, what are the pitfalls that you can run into when you're deriving your inspirations from other media?
Well, I think the most common challenge is going to be how to file off the serial numbers properly. And that means find the balance of something that's inspiration versus something that's actually a pastiche, unless you really know what you're going for. But this is a good time to ask the question for the group in this case. So, in terms of finding and incorporating inspirations from other media into your games, what are the challenges that you've experienced? Craig?
I think the biggest ones are finding a way to incorporate something where it is recognizable as an homage, but isn't just pasted in, like just 100% with just like a name change, or isn't kind of hackneyed and like, well, we've seen this before. I want to try to come up with a different way to incorporate that thing. There's also the issue of like, sometimes you have to just be willing to let certain things go. Like, okay, here's a thing that, as an example, drawing back to the discussion as I arrived to all of this, where you were talking about the cybernetic X-Men. Like, everybody knows Wolverine, everybody loves Wolverine. If you put a character that's too much like Wolverine into your story, everybody's going to go, oh, that's Wolverine. And that may not serve you the best for the purposes of what you're trying to do in the homage, because there's some stuff that just, it's really tough to do it without it seem kind of hackneyed and like, oh, I'm just going to put this in here because everybody loves Wolverine. Sometimes it's a question of finding the things that have the right spirit and the flavor that you're looking for, but without it being the obvious choice and without implementing it in an obvious way.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, totally agree.
Yeah.
And totally missed the mark on that when I was 16. Like my internet, my galactic kumite was called the galactic kumite. Like I really just, like I wasn't even trying. Like I just.
You could have called it Space Kumite. It would have been even worse. So.
Oh, there was no surprise. My players were like, I see what's going on here. And then, we'll talk about it in a second. But go ahead, Jerry, go ahead.
For me, it's, if I'm falling off the serial numbers, I want to do to a point that isn't homage without making it too obvious or too blind. Because sometimes I actually find it's fun for the players to recognize the trope once you get into it and start playing along. There's a dungeon magazine adventure that barely touches on this, where you've got a wealthy playboy that everybody thinks is a vampire who is living with his young ward and is trying to stop some sort of evil jester in town, which is obviously a Batman homage. And you can expand on that and make it, and we've done that where we've had, over time the players realize that this group of serial killers, one always leaves clues, one's obsessed with big cats, one's got a whole bunch of birds, and you can play on that. And once the players get into that, a couple adventures in, it can be a lot of fun.
If I'm in the right mood for that, yes. If I'm if I was expecting this to be a super serious game and that happens, that would be a huge turnoff for me.
Oh no, this was super serious. This wasn't played for jokes.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know where I would have fallen on that one. I'm laughing as you're saying it, and if I knew that was the kind of tone we were going for, I would double down. Right?
No, you can see, that's just it. You can play that super serious. Just like you can have a laser sword in a game, or you can have somebody with an ancient group of martial arts monks who have mental powers and play on all that. I played in a game with somebody who ran the entire Star Wars trilogy, and it turned out that they were running it in a Victorian steampunk world, and it took a while before we figured out what was going on with the big crime lord who was really giant, and we thought it was Kingpin or that. You can play with those, but like you said, that's the challenge: is how to do it in such a way that doesn't end up being a parody. It's an homage instead of a parody. That's what the trick is.
Yeah,
and
need the players in there.
A fun bit to do with that too is if you put something out there that's okay, this is we've got energy weapon wielding space monks who are they you have them share X, Y, and Z with Jedi, and then you vary them in one very specific way that like really throws the players for a loop. And it's like, okay, well, I thought I was dealing with Jedi, and I still kind of am, but they murder people just for no reason, apparently. And maybe there's a reason underneath it, but I can't kind of figure out what it is. So I don't. And then that puts the players in the position of not exactly, like it's recognizable and it's an homage and it's fun, but you've suddenly twisted it to something that they can't just assume.
Like, man, I thought these were Jedi, but they've got like a Klingon mentality. Like Jedi Klingons? What?
I'll play it.
They get married? What?
All of their weapons are strangely unwieldy.
And they're trying really hard to make it look like they're really, really graceful.
Oh, the poor Batlet gets no love.
That goes. Those of you who are part of our Slack room will know that there's been a discussion today about very unwieldy weapons in the Slack room channel today. So that kind of goes the same way. All right, Bob. Talking about unwieldy weapons brought in the games, Bob.
Yeah. So my thing here is you run the risk of having people at the table that aren't familiar with the thing that gave you the inspiration for the game. If you've got somebody that doesn't know the tropes, doesn't know the media property, like they have like zero reference, like they may not get everything the way everybody else at the table does. And if you've got one or two people, or, God forbid, you come to a table and like you're the only one and everybody else is like, what is this? I've never heard of a Star Wars. Like, what? Like, what do you do? Like that can totally derail what you're shooting for.
I think I've told you guys before about the Middle-earth role-playing game I was in, where the GM was like a Tolkien phobe or a Tolkien philiac. He loved everything Tolkien, and only one other player at the table had even read the books or seen the cartoons at the time. And so we had a bunch of players who went into a very serious Middle-earth role-playing game with a D&D mentality, and we ended up rolling Bilbo and taking the ring. And that happens if the players aren't familiar with the source material at all. I can see that being a big problem.
Right. So if you were playing Star Trek, for instance, people who aren't familiar with the media would unplug the holodeck. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Why would I ever go back in there?
Right. One
clearly dangerous.
Right. One trip to the holodeck and you'd be like, we got to turn this thing off. Like, this ride's broken. Whereas like somebody who's, knows the media is like, no, it's fine. Like, the safety
disconnect that damn holodeck from all power sources and shut it down. And I want triple redundancy on that starboard power coupling by Monday. Otherwise, we're not moving.
Right. Yeah.
Don't worry. I've taken care of the holodeck. I've installed a badge. You take care of it, so he'll take care of maintaining it properly. We'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean it's exactly that thing. Like, if you're not familiar with the genre, you'll be like, why are we going in the holodeck? Like last time we went, it tried to kill us. Yeah, but that was like last time we went, and we went through a nebula. Like
plus like the safeties are on, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yep. The safeties fail a lot.
All right, Phil, what about you?
Yeah, for me, there's always the fear, and I think these all fall, like my answer falls in the same line with all of yours. My fear is that when it's not abstracted enough and people start just referring to it by the original term, right? So like, we've our, game with our energy weapons, and then people are like, cool, lightsaber. Right. And they just like start using the word lightsaber. And now it's like, oh,
we're not playing Star Wars. You're not using a lightsaber.
Right. Exactly. Like, it just becomes those things where they're like, oh, that's like an R2. I'm just going to call it R2. And it's like, oh, you're playing wrong. Like,
I spent a long time coming up with a name for that weapon and that robot.
Yes.
That's consistent with naming of other weapons and robots in this world.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, and then like players just like skip right over it.
Just get that R2 thing over here.
And we were I remember recently Bob and I were playing in a campaign of Numenera.
Yeah.
And like it got really bad where like I would be like describing stuff and they'd be like, "Oh, cool, galactic telephone." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like just sure. That's like I had names for these things. Yeah, like I made up names and things for these things. They're like, oh yeah, it's like a galactic telephone. We got it. Cool. We'll try using the galactic telephone later. It's like, oh. So yeah, that's for me. That's where like, I always like I always cringe in game. Like I need something to be abstracted enough. Like even if you get that it's a lightsaber, like at least at my table, don't call it the lightsaber. Like just hang on and just call it what it is. We all know what it is, right? Like we're probably like we probably all know it's a lightsaber or inspired by it, but like let's just not call it that. Yeah. Let's just
and it can help to have that conversation real quick with the players and be like, hey, we're trying not to. I'm using some Star Wars pastiche, but I don't want us to get into the mode of playing a Star Wars game because this game is going to do other things.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's all stick with the terminology that's I've invented.
That's where back in the before times, it was nice to have things like the dry erase 3x5 cards. You actually write in big capital letters, laser sword and prop it up, and somebody was looking at it all the time to use the right term. Keep them on the same page. Because sometimes players need help with that.
Yep.
Playing in person. Yes.
Yes.
It was nice. We'll talk about it in a bit.
Yes, we will.
Cool. All right, so, Bob, take us out.
Yeah, to round out our segment, we're going to talk about combining inspirations from multiple media sources. What do you think, Jer?
All right. Basically, you have to understand that some of our designs are going to be inspired by one media or several media, but it could also be inspired by combining completely disparate media. And so doing that, we're going to end up with that Reese's moment of putting chocolate in the peanut butter and get the best combination possible. So we're going to end up this segment with one final question for Craig. So, for Good Strong Hands, Nowhereville, or any other designs, what is one of your favorite mashups, and what disparate media did you combine to get that result of that mashup?
Well, I'm going to go back to game number 2, to Capers, which we talked about here. That is a pretty straightforward mashup of 20s gangster shenanigans with superpowers. It's, literally, gangsters with superpowers in the 1920s, during the Roaring 20s, during Prohibition. I made the choice of making the superpowers not the world bendy, kind. It's like street level. You're going to affect your neighborhood kind of things. You're not going to affect the country. But, kind of kept the tropes and the kind of themes of what makes a good gangster story. With all the a lot of the same types of stories where it's going to be bootlegging and political maneuvering with law officials, avoiding law enforcement, dealing with rivals, other gangs, and so forth. And then just said, oh, and by the way, people have superpowers. So like there's a Tommy gun, but there's also I-beams, and what wins, Tommy gun or I-beams. So yeah, that Capers is very much a mashup of two specific things.
I know when I wrote that, I was like, oh, will he not say Capers? Will he say Capers? Because that was the first one that came to my mind too. I was like, Capers is like an amazing chocolate peanut butter moment of just
and each of the supplements is a mashup that takes those two elements, and then Capers Noir throws on like, noir stories and horror monsters, and Covert throws in super spies, super villain kind of stuff, and Off-World throws in retro future science fiction.
Oh, it's great. That's awesome. I was picturing in my head as I was thinking about Capers, the scene from The Untouchables at the Canadian border, and just like somebody picking up one of the trucks and throwing it at somebody else.
On the bridge, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just awesome. Like fantastic. Oh.
Sweet. All right, so that is our workshop topic on getting inspirations from other media. We're going to check in with the chat room quickly before we head over to the conversation corner. We were just in talking about not getting the references. Andy said that in D&D she used a plot directly taken from the TNG Season 1, and nobody at the table recognized it, even though there were Trek nerds there.
Was it Skin of Evil?
I don't know if anybody ever wants to touch that as a topic, let alone.
Oh,
well,
man.
for a lot of us, we only ever saw season 1 the one time because it wasn't the best season.
Nope.
So, yeah, like, I don't remember a lot of season 1 episodes terribly well, to be honest.
Yeah. When we did the watch through, we went through season 1, I think, in less than 2 weeks. And it was just like, I was like, look, you have to see a few episodes here, but we really don't have to watch a lot of these. Like, we need to get to season 2 where things are going to get much better quicker.
Yep. And Phil, do you remember when we were running our Eberron game with the investigators in town, and Mike used the plot of Young Sherlock Holmes?
Yes.
As one of the campaign plots?
That's perfect.
It took me like 6 sessions, and I went, wait a minute. This is Young Sherlock Holmes.
It went 6 sessions before any of us figured it out.
Yeah.
Like, it was, yeah.
Oh,
That's
okay.
funny.
Justice, the one where Wesley breaks the world's law.
Yeah.
He stepped on flowers, and they give him the death sentence.
Yes.
That's another one that's been used multiple times, like when B'Elanna has bad thoughts, and they're like, "Oh, you caused this violent outburst, so we're gonna sentence you."
We've only got one punishment on this planet, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
That's okay. Every world in Star Wars is just one climate. So
yes, one biome, biome
single
planets.
biome planets.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean, I think my other favorite trope is Voltron just has like partial worlds, right? From like the Netflix thing, like that world's just broken in chunks, but like it's fine.
Yeah. There's no coherent sphere for this.
Nobody even nobody even questions it in Voltron. You're like flying by, you're like, oh, look at the planet.
Yeah,
that's not a planet. That's a part of a
it's
planet.
An asteroid belt.
It's an asteroid belt in a spherical pattern.
Oh man,
that's a really big meteor at best.
Right.
All right. Well, let's
be a good one. I could do it. Like you could do a D&D game off that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Definitely.
It's going to go bad. Like we have only one rule. We're going to execute you. Well, guess we're murder hoboing our way out of here.
All right. Sharpen my axe.
Now, wait. Now, if they're trying to kill your guy, is it really murder hobo? If at that point they're threatening your life?
Defensive murder hobo?
Self-defense murder hobo?
I mean,
justified murder hobo.
Justifiable murder hobo. There you go. I think that's the term. Justifiable murder hobo is a new phrase. All right. All right, let's jump over to the conversation corner and really get this thing pumping here. Humping? Did I say
what?
Freudian slip? I don't know.
That's okay.
What? I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, well.
Who said blue? I don't. What?
Hit the button.
I'm going to hit the button. All right.
Cool. Well, the conversation corner is where we talk about like just nerdy things that are going on in our lives that, as we frequently steal the phrase from the gauntlet, are giving us life. Craig, tell us a couple things that like just like you're totally jamming on, like outside of gaming.
I've been in this funk. Well, not funk, but I've been in the mode of seeking out bad horror movies again. Lately, those are I generally love watching those with people because you can you MST3K the whole thing.
Oh sure.
But I've revisited some stuff where like I didn't go back and watch Nightmare on Elm Street 1, 2, and 3. I went and watched 4, 5, and 6.
Ooh.
And in order, and was like, woof. Oh boy. That they just get worse and worse, and 6 is terrible.
Which one is 6?
What? Which one is 6? Yeah, Freddy's dead. It's the one that's the one that's got too much stunt casting in it.
Okay.
Alice Cooper as Freddy's dad in a flashback, and Tom and Roseanne Arnold show up as these weird townsfolk, and yeah, it's like there's like this, and the body count is practically non-existent. There's way too much story, not nearly enough murder. Yeah, it's bad stuff. And then I watched, oh man, I couldn't help it. There's a movie called Slacks, SLAXX. It is about a killer pair of designer jeans.
Come on.
I want to see that. I saw it advertised. What is it?
It's spectacularly bad. It's so much fun. It's so silly.
Does it have to trick people in putting them on, or like can it put them can they put them on to other people? Like
it kills people in a surprisingly diverse number of ways.
I'm
say
very
that.
Curious now.
Because you would find yourself thinking like, well, why would anybody put on a pair of pants if that they didn't know if they have seen a pair of pants kill a bunch of people? It murders people in a number of ways. And over on the Nerdburger Games Discord, it's been interesting to see. I threw the idea out there and I kind of suggested it to some of the regulars on the Discord, and some people have taken it and they're running with it. And I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know how big it's going to get, or if it'll be completed, or if it'll be a thought exercise. But there's people that are like, they're designing a game together. They're like, just hashing out like a game to make, an RPG. Where exactly it's going to end up, I don't know, but I'm doing my best to not go in there and influence, but I'm every so often, they'll ask questions and I'll respond, and every so often just throw in, something like, well, just something to think about here. Think about this, like, and just, to help spark discussion and direction and decision making. So, I got a great deal of help in getting to where I am. During freelance days and with people giving advice on when I went to designing my own stuff and publishing, and I try to give back when I can. And so having a Discord community where there's some people who are like, taking some of the knowledge that I've disseminated to them and working on a game as a group, and having a fun little collaboration and just kind of seeing that develop has been a lot of fun. That's very cool.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what they come up with.
I hope it goes the distance, because the concept, I mean, they're still nailing down some stuff, because it's one of those, like, when it's on a Discord and it's a bunch of people, it can take a while to kind of get somewhere with it until they really nail some things down. But there's some really interesting ideas floating around in there.
Neat. I'm going to throw in my bad horror movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I remember this from when I was a kid, because I haven't seen it since I was a kid. Did you ever see The Driller Killer?
Oh, yeah.
It sounds familiar.
Slumber Party Massacre 2?
No, 1979. It's actually called The Driller Killer.
Called The Driller Killer.
It's called The Joker, yeah. That's the one with the guy in the apartment, right?
I mean, I was like in sixth grade. I just remember.
I don't specifically recall seeing it.
Yeah,
I think it's about a guy, or he's either the building super or somebody, who goes around killing people in his apartment building the drill.
Yes. Yeah. He's got an actual, like, he's got like a cordless drill or something, and he's murdering people with his drill. Like, he just sneaks up and like just drills them.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good. Like, yeah. If you're in the mood for a bad horror movie, it's not good. But yeah, I do remember as a kid, because it was the 80s. So like, we went through that whole period where we were raiding the video store for, whatever terrible horror movies we could find and take them home and watch them on Saturday nights.
I got a bad horror.
When I was in college, I was the only person on my floor with a VCR for 2 years.
You must have been very popular.
Every Saturday night when I got on my way back from work, I would stop at Movies Plus and we'd pick up one or two movies that were really good, and then we always picked up one bad horror movie, and then one movie that we just bought based on the cover, like Ninja 3: The Domination. But I used to host bad movie nights sometimes. We would watch, things like, some of the worst Friday the 13th movies, or, Sorority Babes and the Slime Bowl-orama.
Oh, yeah.
So
silly.
And, I love that movie. But yeah, so I'm a big fan of bad horror movies. I mean, I've seen some horror movies lately that were just bad because they weren't interesting. I like movies that are deliberately campy bad, or, just bad special effects, or
yeah, if they're
a
bad,
movie that I thought was going to be good.
Then they're less entertaining. Like House of a Thousand Corpses from Rob Zombie was a terrible movie. Bad.
Yeah.
Terrible.
And I like Rob Zombie, but that's just, a movie that should have been really, really, really bad, that had way too much plot and characterization and actually made it decent. Evil Bong. I thought Evil Bong was going to be horrible. I got it on one of those, I bought this 5 movies on one DVD collection because I wanted this one movie and I figured I was going to watch everything on it. And Evil Bong was on there. It was a Bad Moon Films. And it should not be good, and it's actually entertaining and watchable.
A quick aside on the Slumber Party Massacre 2. And for some reason, I was thinking the subtitle to it was The Driller Killer, but I guess I just heard the name Driller Killer because the killer in Slumber Party Massacre 2 does some of his killings with a guitar that has a gigantic drill bit, like basically attached to it. That's part of it. And it's worth watching for the sake of the fact that there is a legitimate musical number with said guitar in the movie. And it's long. It's a long musical number.
That's funny. So it's interesting because I'm not like I'm not a huge horror movie fan, but where I fall, like where I can, similar to you guys, like I can do that with wuxia films. I can watch the worst wuxia films possible, and I love them. Like old Shaw Brothers, like all the way
Shaw
up.
Brothers cheese, man.
I mean, from the worst Shaw Brothers movies to like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, I'm there for all of it. Like I will never turn down watching a wuxia movie.
Which, by the way, I have a DVD collection. We're gonna have a wuxia night.
I'm in.
We're gonna sit down and we're gonna watch some stuff because I've got a collection of old stuff that I'm like, we need to bring this to a TV.
I got the Flying Guillotine. If you want to see a really bad one, the Flying Guillotine is not good. It's like a throwable hat thing that cuts people's heads off. It's hilarious. Like
it's Odd Job from James Bond.
No. It has to like land on your head, and then it like and then like you pull the cord and it like to pop you. It's ridiculous. It's great.
Jean, fellow podcaster Jean Gu Hustle does a whole episode about the Flying Guillotine.
Yes. I was very impressed when they did it. Like, because I mean, it's no Jim Cotta. Because that's
clearly there's nothing could ever replace Jim Cotta in the annals of terrible fucking martial arts movies.
Jim Cotta's a special kind of hell.
Yes, it is.
It is worth watching because it's just like, how many towns have a stone pommel horse right in the middle of them? Like, that is like very convenient. All right.
I need to fight these guys, so I'm going to pommel horse my way. No.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Who's up?
Jerry's up.
Okay. Well, first of all, the next episode of The Nevers came out, and in true streaming service form, we hit episode 4 last week, and so all of a sudden the story took off, and episode 5 is just rolling along. And so this week we ended up getting a steampunk mutant X-Men style double heist. So always good. Right. I'm enjoying the show. It's not perfect, but it's a lot of fun. Caught up on some Voyager, which has been just really well done. I'm really liking the show, liking the tropes. I'm at the point now where, just like you said, like there was no holodeck episode, but there was a thing where I watched this show and I got to the end of it and I realized at no point did I think, why didn't they just shoot that guy? Which they should have done, because I'm like, no, that's not how Star Trek works. You don't shoot that guy.
Yeah.
You let him do. And so it's fun to go along with that. Caught up on a couple extra episodes of She-Ra. I'm slowly making my way through the series. It's been good, but I know Bob will talk probably more about that. But I'm still in the early seasons. And playing a lot of Valheim. And it's been a lot of fun because in Valheim, as you go from different biomes, they get much, much more dangerous. You start out in the meadows, and then the Black Forest is a little bit more dangerous, and then the swamp is deadly, and then the mountains are terrifying, and the plains will just annihilate you. And Bob and I have been kind of dipping our toes into the swamp for a while, but this week we decided to actually team up with Chris and go after the big monster in the swamp, and now we're better at that. So we decided we're going to take a shot at the mountains, and we had a good time for a while. And then I found out that in Valheim, you can fly, but only if you're hit really hard by a stone golem and knocked off the mountain. I got smacked really hard, and I had lots of health. And a stone golem will kill you with 2 hits. So the stone golem hits me, and I'm like, oh good, I've got 40 health. And I looked up, like, I have like 9 stories off the ground and still moving through the air, and there's nothing under me, and I died.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious. So it's a neat, from game design, it's a neat thing because as you go, you get better gear and get better skills, all of a sudden, a part of the game that was something that you avoided at all costs now becomes something that you start exploring and having fun with. And so even, what are we, 2 months into this thing, playing almost every night? We're at the point now where there's a whole bunch of places in the world that Bob and I, like, well, there's swamp. We're not going any further than that. Now we're like, now let's go explore what's in there. And I think that's making the game much more playable. And it's like, oh, this thing that was terrifying to us before is now just, oh, there it is. We fought it and we feel good about it. And then what's the next most terrifying thing? Oh my God! And then we're dead. And that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
So that was Valheim for me. So Bob?
Yeah. So, as Jerry was just saying, Valheim, the way they do the progression of how you have to find stuff to get better gear, like the little twist to it is like, oh, you need better gear to be able to get into the swamp, but really to get the good gear, you got to get into the swamp. So you got to go with the mediocre gear. You got to make your bronze and make your bronze stuff, then go into the swamp to find the iron so that you can make the really good stuff, so that you can go up into the mountains, et cetera, et cetera. Jerry's fun to hang out with on Valheim too, because there's inevitably some moment where it's, oh, look what mean old Mr. Gravity did. Jerry will go off the edge of a rock and be like, oh shit, there's nothing underneath that side of the rock. Do I have enough health that when I hit the ground, I will survive? So that's fun.
That's actually that's the other way I died yesterday was, for the last, 3 weeks, a wolf will just slaughter both of us.
Yeah.
And we're at the point now where we can take on 2 or 3 wolves at a time. And we've done that. We were probably taking on some wolves in the mountains, and then I fell off a mountain and landed in a pack of wolves. And
yeah.
I died soon after that because
either one of those would have been fine on its own, but then you combine Impact with Wolfpack, and you
it's also a game with good teamwork. There's a big advantage of playing with more than one player because one person can do something fun while the other one's just kind of watching out for them or helping them out. And it's something I'd like to figure out how to do more for a role-playing game element is the idea of the assist or the bonus comes in. Go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
That's all right. So yeah, that's been one of the highlights of the last couple of months. This past Sunday, and Phil will talk about it a little more, we had our first session of gaming in person. It was a shortened actual gaming session because of all of the banter and dinner beforehand and all of that stuff. We found ourselves just shooting the shit and cracking jokes and busting up laughing. There was one moment where Phil and I both had to take our glasses off and rub our eyes because we were laughing so hard. It was just, it was so good to get together face to face with people again, real human beings, give everybody a big hug when I showed up, it was just so nice. So looking forward to being able to do that again with the same group in 2 weeks and then the other group, very soon and expanding out from there. Very much enjoying Voyager. I'm so glad that I decided to give Voyager a second chance because when it first came out, there was some problems with the main conceit of the story, the Lost in Space angle. There were some things that I misremembered about Janeway that I didn't like the way she handled the ship back in the day. I felt like she gave the ship up too many times. But in retrospect, watching it again, every time she had to give up the ship, she had to give up the ship. There was no, oh, she should have used the self-destruct. Well, one time they disabled the self-destruct, so she couldn't. Stuff like that. They're telling some really interesting stories. They're treading some ground that has been tread by other Star Trek shows. But they're doing it with their own spin. So it's been interesting, and it's a lot more serial than I remember it. I remember it being like one-off episode after episode after episode, but really there's a lot of through lines going through this series because you've got the main plot line of let's try to get home, and then you've got character development of people. The Doctor storyline has been fascinating. Mm-hmm. And after watching one of the episodes on last week's watch list, Phil will agree with me. I want a Doctor episode, Doctor from Voyager, to show up on Discovery.
Yep.
Because they could do it.
Yep. There's a place where that will actually fit.
That will actually work. Yep. So yeah, very much enjoying Voyager. She-Ra has been a delight. I'm glad I finally got around to that. I had to push it higher up on the list because Senda just wouldn't leave me alone. But yeah, and season 5 just, like cranks everything up a notch. You have to wait. Luckily, I didn't have to wait the 6 months that everybody else did when they were watching it the first time through, but season 5 has just been like, whoa, like, wow, man. And I spent parts of the last couple of days sleeving cards because I need to clean some stuff up, because if I'm going to eventually move out of this house, there will have to be the purge and the packing and everything like that. And I'm looking around my room thinking to myself, okay, I've got all these games and I need to consolidate some stuff. And I'm like, well, I've got like 6 packs of sleeves over here for Thunderstone Quest that I bought, and I have not sleeved the cards yet. I'm like, I can rectify one problem, have less stuff by sleeving those cards and not having packs of sleeves. So I started working on that, and yeah, it's going to be interesting going forward. I have a shit ton of games and stuff to pack. Actually, I have a shit ton of games to pack. I don't have a lot of stuff, and the move is going to be less of a chore than I originally had envisioned it, because I don't have stuff. Like, I don't have a couch. Right. Like, I'm going into wherever I go from here with a recliner, a gaming table if I get the replacement parts for the one that came broken today. Oh
no,
it's damaged from shipping, but I've got a recliner. I'll have a table. I've got a shitty little bed that's going to be temporary. I may not even bring the bed. I may just sleep in the recliner until I buy a proper bed.
No, bring the bed. Don't.
No, really. Honestly, it depends on what I get for this. No, you have to understand. It depends on what I'm going to get for this house and how much money I'll have left over after putting a down payment on a condo or whatever. If there's money there, then the bed will come week 1, like after a couple of days, like bam, bam, bam. Yeah. Like, it's not going to be, I'm not going to go 6 months on a recliner. No. That's right.
When I first bought this house, there was a recliner in the basement that I disinfected, because I only had like a couple of futon mattresses to sleep in because I left all my other furniture behind. And there were several nights that I was downstairs in the game room and got to the point where I'm like, I'm tired. I just went over and sat in the recliner and slept there till the morning.
Yep.
First that'll change when,
yeah,
I got a serious girlfriend who became my wife. That wasn't going to fly anymore.
Yeah, that definitely changes.
Then we got a bed.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the other thing about the recliners, I've been in houses where the recliner is the most comfortable place in the
It's not a terrible recliner. It's pretty comfortable. So, yeah. All right, that's enough about me. Phil, what's going on with you?
Hey, I bought a new bag. I haven't done that in forever. I was so there's this great company in San Francisco, Waterfield, that makes these like really nice bags. And over like the last like 6 or so months, they had a group of people, like a focus group, go through and look at designs for new sling bags, like small crossbody bags. And I don't remember how I got in on it, but I got invited to it, and I participated. It was like 3 or 4 sets of surveys where they showed you different designs and you commented on them and gave feedback, things like that. Well, they finalized them. And for everybody who was in that group, they gave a early bird discount for ordering a bag. So I was like, oh, I'm totally buying one. So I ordered the small crossbody bag. I don't need anything big. I just, thing to hold my phones, my wallet, stuff like that. Black nylon, red leather, looks really slick. I think it ships next week, which was really exciting. Like they did the advanced order so that they could prep them and ship them right away. But I love this little company. Like, this company's pretty small. I got, like, when I ordered something from them last year during the pandemic, like, the owner emailed me and was like, I know you ordered this, but I can't ship anything because we're in lockdown. And I was like, yeah, I know. I'm like, you'll ship it when you're out of lockdown someday. Like, it's cool. But he emailed me again. He's like, oh, thanks so much for ordering the bag. And I was like, listen, that process was cool. Like, I was totally invested in this bag I was totally invested in this bag the whole way through. I knew I was buying one as we got closer, because as they were narrowing the design decisions down, I was like, oh, I like where you guys are going with this. So yeah, I had a lot of fun. I haven't bought a bag in a while. Haven't used one in a while. So it'll be nice to do that. Forbidden Lands we played in person, which was the first time in 14 months I actually put stuff in my backpack.
Yep.
And took it somewhere. Bob touched on some of it. It was really good to see everybody. It was hilarious trying to get the game off the ground with such questions as, does everybody remember where we sit at this table? That was a discussion.
Yep.
We're playing Forbidden Lands. These guys have all been using Roll20 for the last 14 months. So we had to have a complete refresher in how to roll the dice in the game, because it's this particular dice pool mechanic, and everybody's just been clicking things on the screen and having the Roll20 macros calculate everything. So to kind of go through again, people are like, oh, right. Like, what dice do I pull? What color dice? And so that was a lot of fun. And it took like 4 or 5 attempts to get everybody on track to start the story, because every time we were about to start, we just busted up into like some jokes and stuff like that. And it didn't bother me, because I kind of knew that was how the game was going to go with first time back to the table. So we got into like a little bit of story. But really it was just the experience of being back at the table for the first time since lockdown, sharing a meal together, hanging out together. Like it felt really good. Like it reminded me of like, it's been a while since I've played anything face to face. So it was nice.
Oh, I forgot about the food. I mean, it was just hamburgers and hot dogs, right? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
No, hamburgers and hot dogs. Mm-hmm. Except our friend Sean saw this dip at Aldi that was crab rangoon dip. And so
it was good.
It was super good. And I started eating it with chips. And then somebody was like, hey,
me.
You should Phil said, put it on the burger. And I went, put it on the burger. And I put it on the burger.
I was not wrong.
It was glorious. I ate most of it.
Yeah, it was good. That was good. And then I haven't really done too much else this week. I've been on some bike rides. That's been great. Been watching my Voyager, and still binging Blacklist. I'm into season 3 of Blacklist. We have not jumped the shark yet. I think it's the next season where this starts to teeter over the edge. But for right now, it's still pretty solid. So I'm just going to keep watching it. When it jumps the shark, I'll just stop watching it. I'll go find something else to watch, which is fine. But for now, it's like good. It's like good in the morning, like when I'm making breakfast and stuff. I don't really have to pay attention to it. Like it's not a new show or anything like that. So it's good. All right. Well, that's us. We're going to wrap. We're going to actually let Craig go, because Craig has to get up early in the morning. And we understand the need for proper sleep.
Yep.
So before we let you go, Craig, but first, I just want to thank you for coming on and talking to us tonight. That was awesome. Nowhereville and Nowhereville sounds amazing. It's still in Kickstarter right now, so people should definitely go check it out. And also, Good Strong Hands is going to make it out. Oh, go ahead.
Quick note. The quick start for Good Strong Hands is it's a PDF. It's free. It's on DriveThruRPG.
Oh,
I don't want to forget about that. Like I actually put the quick start out there.
We'll put a link.
And there's a link in there where you can sign up, and I'll let you know when the book itself is ready to go.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. So thanks for coming on tonight, and tell us where people can find you.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. It's been a couple of years, so good to be back. Find me. You can check me out at nerdburgergames.com. If you like the capers thing that we were talking about, that's where the fancy, nice hardcover is available. For the record, the hardcover, the deluxe hardcover there is $40. It's the same price as what it would cost to get the POD hardcover, and it's a better book. But you can also go to DriveThruRPG.com for everything else, PDFs and books and combos. And I am at NerdburgerCraig on the Twitter.
There we go.
Cool.
Fantastic. Craig, feel free to drop off when you're ready. If anybody's watching in the stream, there are some people watching the stream. Stream's going to go a little wonky for a second, but fear not.
I think I have the answer to that going forward. But yeah, tonight the visuals are gonna go off the charts.
Yep.
All right, everybody. Here comes the wonk. Thank you again,
Good night, Craig.
I had a good time.
Thanks for joining us.
Talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
Oh, so close.
So close. Stabilize visuals. Bring us about, Mr. Everson.
Oh, man.
Engage patron shoutouts.
Yes. So, thank you very much to Randy Farmer, the old school DM, our very own Sean Merwin, the Mad Wizard, Troy Sandlin, Chris Constantine, Cindy Moore, Eric Simon, Mirko Frolik, Andrew Demps, Brandon Barnes, and Brantley Harris. And thanks to everyone for listening tonight.
If you are free on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's time, you're welcome. Come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with other listeners in the awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
And if you cannot make the live show, check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts. Take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Mastering Dungeons, Bonestone Obsidian, the FM Gamers, Candy's Talking Games, the Gnome Cast, The Lounge, Bonus Experience, Zhanghu Hustle, where you can hear an episode about the Flying Guillotine, and back episodes of She's a Super Geek. You can and should also check out our sibling podcasts, Tabletop Bellhop, The Night to the Night, and the always amazing Gaming MBS.
After you have attempted to leave the town only to find out that your crippling illness will condemn you to spend the rest of your life there, leave us some feedback. You can join us. You can reach us directly via the old-fashioned emails, mmp@misdirectedmark.com. Hit us up on Twitter. The show, the network, is at misdirectedmark. One of these guys is Robert M. Everson. Raise your hand. One of these guys is GM Gerrymander. And I am DNA Phil.
All right. If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. MMP, Mastering Dungeons, and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. Zhanghu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhanghu Hustle, and Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. I feel like there's a pattern there. Patrons of MMP, Mastering Dungeons, and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, which we haven't done one in a while, the Bamboo Lounge, and other special releases.
And for the record, that's Pandas Talking Games, not Panties Talking Games.
That's a whole different show.
Yes, it is. But this has been a Misdirected Mark production. The media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
We out.